It is 2:33. We are calling this meeting, September meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee to order. First item is always simple. Mr. Edmondson?
Present.
Ms. Long?
Mr. Wolfgang.
Here. Mr. Lindemood?
Yes.
Buck? Here. Ms. Marmelo's here. Mr. Benho?
Present.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Sorry, it's on.
Here.
I was like, I couldn't, Jerry was blocking you. Maybe somebody in the middle. We do have, we do have quorum. And yes, let the record show that Mr. Emerson is sitting in for Mr. Young. Craig, will you make the public involvement announcement, please?
Yes, all AMATS meetings are open to the public. The public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or a consultant. The committee will then be given a chance to discuss it, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. So first item ahead of us is approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Lindemood, seconded by Mr. Emerson. Are there any objections?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
We
sir.
could add an informational item. We have the Stewart Highway project, the Diamond O'Malley. We have consultants here to present, and they did request a while ago, and owing to the fact that we wouldn't have screen, I was gonna scrub that. They're nice enough to bring the presentation forward, so.
Okay,
They've been told 10 minutes, and they're at that point in the agenda.
so do we need the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update item as the informational item?
I imagine.
Yes. Okay, so
that's
are we doing
extremely
Stewart
short.
Highway first or
Let's do
second?
Stewart Highway first.
Okay. So that, we had the motion.
Second.
No, it's moved, seconded.
Moved, seconded.
You had, all right. Are there any opposed to, is that a friendly amendment or?
Very friendly.
No,
It's
no,
fine, it's
First,
fine.
second or not. All right, are there any opposed to amending the agenda as proposed? All right. We have added to the highway. Okay, so those handouts that are after the meeting minutes are actually for today. Good. Because it does say, you didn't read the meeting minutes, did you, Greg?
Not for a long time.
Because the meeting minutes from last month say, informational item, Stewart Highway, O'Malley to Diamond Boulevard. This item is postponed to September 14th.
I already admitted I blew it. Please let the record show.
I know. All right. So first item ahead of us after the agenda is the meeting minutes from last month's meeting. Seconded by Mr. Emerson. Are there any objections? All right. None. Those meeting minutes are approved. I'm rearranging, sorry. I made lots of paperwork. All right, so first action item, action 5A, the draft 2018-19 Unified Planning Work Program.
So this is our work program for the next 2 years. This is basically staff time, just a refresher. We have our 20-year plan, which is the MPP that we're working on. We have the TIP, which is the 4-year program of projects. This is what staff is going to be doing for the next 2 years. We are required to have this adopted before the end of the year. We are required by our operating agreement to receive our allocation from DOT by October 1st. So we don't have the budget yet, but we need to get the actual work program out for 30-day review so that it can all get adopted in time. So this is very similar to the previous one, the 16-17 work program. We have a few changes in it, minor modifications, etc., and updated. We're just asking you to release it right now for 30-day public review. Our suggestion would be to have a work session there to kind of dust it off, and give you some more information on it. But it is very similar to the previous one. Happy to answer questions, but it's ready to roll, and we're just wanting you to release it for 30 days so that we can get comments back from the public and agencies, et cetera, and then we'll pair that with the budget. So the next time you see it, we'll have the budget ready to roll and ask you to adopt it.
So the plan would be to have this in October.
Yes.
Are there any questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, if I have one.
Yeah, Mr.
If I
Rousseau.
wanted to incorporate the transit asset management plan as one of the task items in the UPWP, would it be after the public process or during the work session, or?
It would be after the public process, yeah, it could be a comment
Fair enough.
or a suggestion. Well, exactly, I said you can make a comment during the 30-day public review, a suggestion on a change.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, are there any questions or comments from the public on this item? Hearing none, the matter will ask the committee. 3 minutes.
Move to release the draft WPP for public review period.
Second. By Ms. Sargent, seconded by Ms. Walsh. Are there any objections? All right, hearing none, then are so moved. So, related to that, I will not be here next month. I will-
Entirely unacceptable.
Okay, I will be gone the 1st and the 18th, so I will not be here to chair.
I'm here.
Co-chair. Yeah, I'm seconding. So I'll make sure to make comments if I have any before. If you have a work session before.
Have it when it fits.
So, I guess we'll- 30 days from today?
What's that?
So.
30 days from today, we're supposed to get our budget on October 1st. It would be nice to have those two pieces of information, the program and the budget, before we have a work session, so.
Got it. And you want to be after October?
Could be,
Really? This may not be back to us
it's possible. We need to get it adopted in November, because then we need to take it to the assembly to approve the budget, so
till. Yeah,
we can get paid.
Okay.
We meaning AMATS staff.
got it.
So through the chair,
Yes, ma'am.
so when do you want committee comment?
If in the next 30 days, would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
You're gonna show me what's in that,
Do I need-
right? No, in the transit.
Okay, so yes, if we could get committee comments too within the next 30 days, so those can be incorporated and consolidated. Because any comments, I'm sure if we're gonna have a work session, we'll go through all the comments and stuff. Okay. Next item for us is item 5E, the draft 2019 to 2022 Transportation Improvement Program criteria.
Okay, so as you know, we are building a new tip, we're starting the process, and this is basically the first step. We did have a work session on these criteria to kick them around a little bit. The main changes that we have made in these criteria are to add in, to make them, brain cramp on what we did, just to make them mesh with the FAST Act, any changes that might have been in the FAST Act. So what you have before you are the roadway, non-motorized, and CMAQ criteria, as well as the criteria for the TAP funds, the Transportation Alternative Program. The first three that I mentioned are the ones that, the allocation of which we decide those funds. The TAP ones, and we can pick the projects, we nominate the projects, all that sort of stuff. The TAP ones are ones that are not nominated by AMATS, they're nominated by outside entities, local government entities, et cetera. But they're all in the same tip, and so we were putting them out at the same time for, asking that you release them at the same time for public review. So you did see them in work session, so they're here before you requesting release.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I have one question.
Yes, Mr. Hart.
significant changes from last time on, I'm reading the TAP draft. Waiting on that page.
The weightings are the same.
Oh.
Very little changes on these. It's just basically updating to the FAST Act standards.
When did we have a work session?
No.
2 months ago?
Yeah, it was a
It's
while.
been that long.
It has, it was July.
Madam Chair, question?
Yes, Mr. Sun.
So 2 months ago when we met, it was an introduction of the 3 or 4 different items that are here, including the rate of each of these categories. I was of the impression that maybe there would be a follow-up work session in which we actually sat down and had a discussion on whether the weight's appropriate and whether it should be re-weighted before sending it out to the public. Unless perhaps we can do that after the public review as part of the comment process.
I guess you could do that. I don't remember that being a request, but I guess we could do that as part of this public review period. We can discuss that. We can schedule another work session. We just need to get this thing adopted in a short period of time.
I know the question came up at the work session, Bull. I don't know if we ever determined whether or not we were gonna have another work session, or whether that was gonna be something that we were going to have the public and ourselves comment on to see what came in regarding the ideas of the weighting of some of these, of these
I imagine
categories.
so long as we as a body have the opportunity to discuss whether these are rated appropriately and should or could be changed. Whether it's done after the comment period, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, the policy committee is, and they're the final arbiter. They can decide if they want to change them based on your recommendation, of course, but
Yeah.
it's up to them.
So the action today is just to release it.
Just to release it for
30 days
public
review.
review, yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody?
Madam Chair, another question would be, and again, I don't know if it would be a motion to introduce prior to approval. But do we have, as we put this out to the public, do we have sort of a notification clause that informs the public? Because this is such a involved process that educates them on to the discussions that we've had in terms of it's a 4-year tip. And of course, we are discussing the MTP at the same time, and that the project pipeline from the MTP process will not necessarily be incorporated as the project pipeline in TIP, that the nomination processes are different. And if that information is out there, great, but I think it wouldn't hurt to have a asterisk/caveat that informs the public that 2 separate processes, and they may not necessarily align at the same time.
We are governed by our public involvement plan that talks about when and how long these things go out, so and that's what we go by. So that's why we're asking for a 30-day public release.
I think it's more of a question of how, well, I don't mean to speak for you, Bull, but.
How do we disseminate the information to the public so that they can have an educated feedback response, I suppose?
Yeah.
Because we might understand the nuance of the difference between the two. I can almost be sure that the public does not. And so they might be here to have a discussion on the MTP 2040 process and nominate projects, which we're going over the comments, only to think that, oh, so the tip that we allocate for a 4-year period may have those projects be nominated as part of this, when truly that's not the case, and it may not be until 2021.
I guess my answer is that on the front page of our homepage shows the MTP and the TIP and the UPWP. It shows our different plans there. If you click on any of those, it'll tell you exactly what that is. It'll tell you the MTP is a 20-year program. It'll tell you the TIP is a 4-year program. So it's on the front page. I have, based on my interaction with the public, I'd say I have pretty good confidence that the public understands the difference between our 4-year TIP and our 20-year MTP. But that's just my gut feeling based on my interaction and comments from folks. Yeah, so far I've seen that they're smart enough to understand the difference between those things. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. Madam Chair.
Yes. Yes.
Can I just clarify real quick, as the process for reaching out for a 30-day or more public comment period usually does provide some background information on what they are reviewing and what concurrent processes are going on. So if it pleases the body, happy to put an asterisk in saying that this is a different process than the nomination period for the 2040 MTP projects.
Because these two nomination processes are kind of happening almost concurrently, and it doesn't always happen that way, I think the asterisk would probably be beneficial.
Happy to do that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Excuse me, if I'm not mistaken, the issue may also be, so when is the tip supposed to be finished? The next tip, Mr. Meyer?
Because it's a 19 to 22, it has to be approved by September next year,
Of 2018.
because the fiscal year
So,
starts in
Mr.
October 1st.
Hassan brings up a good point. There will be some new projects in there that are not in the current tip that perhaps we should be considering for the MTP. Is that what you're saying, Mr.
Yes.
Hassan? I think that's what he's saying, and that's a good question. So by that point, we will have already done our modeling, we will have already been through most of what we will have done for the MTP, for the future deficiencies and the projects that we think are going to be in the solutions, and we will be already into the public review process for the MTP. So I think that should the expectation may be there that because a project is in the new tip, that we'll be considering it for the MTP. And I'm not sure that that time frame is going to fit. It's unfortunate, but I don't think that,
Yeah, the timing is not good. But there always is an opportunity to amend, and that's in the conversation. So, amend the tip. There's administrative modifications, there's amendments, there's changes that happen to
Oh.
both documents.
I see.
I mean, you're.
The tip gets modified quarterly to semi-annual.
I thought you meant amend the MTP.
No.
Oh.
No, I said the tip, the tip. Yeah, no, once the MPP is, we're just gonna change everything, man. Although there are methods and, there are methods and means to amend nearly every document in some way, going through the proper protocol, whether it's the policy committee on our side, whether, really, yeah. The timing in this is very awkward though, so I think it would be good to add a message and clarify that there are two different timelines running almost concurrently right now, so. Are there any other questions from the committee? Are there any questions or comments from the public on this item? Got one someplace? Hearing none, matter lies with committee.
Move to approve with the asterisk in place?
Or release for public?
Yes.
Could you,
Second or
Yeah.
move to release for the public with the asterisk.
and the asterisk for the record?
Is that it's distinct from the,
Clarifying the timing of the MTP and the TIP nominations.
the
So-
tip and the MTP are the same thing.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Hassan, seconded by Mr. Amundson. Are there any objections, I should say? Hearing none? We are so moved. The next item before us is item 5A, 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, XNO2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For those who may not know, I'm Vivian Underwood with Municipal Transportation Planning and staff to AMATS. And the 2040 MTP is our 20-year transportation plan. We're required to update it every 4 years. It's multimodal. And this particular update is due to be completed and finished and approved by November of 2019. So we have a lot of work to do in the next 2 years. And before we get too much farther, I'd like to introduce two people on the telephone. We have John McPherson with HDR Alaska Inc., who's our contractor project manager. And John is available to answer any questions on the Tech Memo 2, which is the future deficiencies analysis. And we also have Jessica Smith, who's the transportation planner from the Matsu Borough. We have been coordinating with the Matsu Borough on the land use allocation for the Matsu Borough without the Kinnicum crossing. So just wanted to let you know about that. So for this item, you have a memo. You have the Tech Memo 2 future deficiency analysis and the comment response summary by staff. So you may recall that you had a joint work session with the Citizens Advisory Committee on May 23rd for a PowerPoint that laid out the approach we were going to be taking with this memo. We don't have a lot of money to keep reworking the memos, and changing them and updating them, so we wanted to make sure that we were all right with our general approach. So the PowerPoint was shared with the public at public meetings and online, and then the document was prepared by HDR Alaska, which documented all of what was laid out in the PowerPoint. And it was put out for public review and comment for 2 weeks, and it also went to the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Freight Advisory Committee, the BPAC Committee, and the general public. So we got comments from 3 Citizens Advisory Committee members, and from one member of the Policy Committee, Mr. Whittleton, who's here today. And his comments were also endorsed by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So there were 106 comments altogether. And I have to tell you that the online version, to my chagrin, the PDF of the comment response summary, some of the cells, the text appeared on the screen, but the cells were not large enough to accommodate all the text. So your version of the comment response summary has pages 7, 14, and 16 and 17 have some bolded text, and that's the language that was inadvertently left off. The public's comments, so the copies that we have for the public are the same, except they don't have the bolded text. Didn't want anybody to feel that we had shorted them or slighted them in any way, the comments. Certainly did not mean to do that. So just real quickly, a lot of the comments that we got, especially from the Citizens Advisory Committee, were questions about the socioeconomic projections that were documented for the model update that was completed in 2016. And we tried to explain that, for the most part, the Policy Committee directed us to use the model that was already approved. So this effort is not going back and revisiting those assumptions, except for 2 things. And one is to reflect the land use plan allocations, and also the land use allocation for the Matsu Borough without the Kinnicum crossing. So those are 2 things that were done. And on page 1, we wanted to call out that fact in the text there. This has track changes in it to help you follow. And then the source documents are footnoted down at the bottom that were for the model update. That was a very in-depth process, and it's just not something we have the time or the money to do, to go back and revisit all that. And a lot of the changes had to do, if you turn to page 21 and 22, and 24, a lot of people just wanted some explanation, a little more interpretation of some of the graphics. And so a lot of this language was added with the help of HDR to try to explain. For example, one of the Citizens Advisory Committee members said that some of the graphics were, it appeared that the changes were huge just by the scale that the graphic was presented, when in actuality the changes were minuscule. And that text was added to the paper. And then we do have more changes to the pedestrian and bicycle sections on pages 42 and 43. And you can see the track changes there. And this was posted online a week ago. So I'd like to ask if there are any questions. And what we're going to be doing today is asking you to please recommend to the policy committee approval. At the last policy committee meeting, there were several members who indicated that they would like to be more involved in this project, and earlier on than in the past. In the past, policy committee has usually just let the technical advisory committee serve the review and approval process of these early documents. But, so we're happy to do that. And our assumption is that we will be taking this document then to them for approval, along with Tech Memo 1A and 1B that you've already approved. So,
Thank you, Judy.
yes, you're welcome.
Mr. Hart?
I'd like to just make a comment and commend the staff for this document. The transparency, I can see the questions and the answers. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hassan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Share the same sentiments as Mr. Hart. Do have a specific question. So if I understand this correctly, then as a result of making the presumption that the bridge is no longer there, if I turn to page 29 then, and then I take a look at the graphic here, and the varying grade capacities allocated to each of the arterials, then assuming, my apologies, I might have missed this part. So assuming no bridge, is the highway-to-highway scenario part of this as well?
We,
Assuming no bridge and assuming there is a highway-to-highway, because I recall that.
There is no such project.
True, but as I recall, the policy committee had requested that that be a modeling scenario.
it will be a scenario, but it's not in the existing and committed list of projects. So for the deficiencies analysis, we only looked at, if we only do what we've already committed to doing through the TIP and other funding, the funding is in place for, as of right now, and we didn't do anything else, that's what shows up in the deficiencies analysis. But you're absolutely right. One thing that we really want to do is to run the model with these projects and only the highway, Glen Highway to Seward Highway connection. It's our supposition that it will have such a good impact that maybe some of the other projects that are listed may not even be needed. Or we may be able to do different things in different parts of town. Maybe we might be able to accept a lower level of service in town centers, for example, given with that in place. So that's going to be, I think the thinking is, probably everybody in this room agrees that the Glen Highway to Seward Highway connection is one of the most important and most beneficial projects that we could do to the overall network.
I guess where I'm a little lost is, say we approve this, that's great, that's based on existing.
Right.
And then, of course, the scenario is run at some later time to be able to ascertain theoretically what the impact would be to the grade levels of these arterials. But if that were true, then wouldn't it be sort of a cascading effect that impacted the decisions that we make on the project pipeline as a whole and the ranking criteria? Because what you're doing is you're projecting two future outcomes, one with, one without, and then every requirement that you're coming up with theoretically goes into that one future or the other one. So
It could, but don't forget, our initial screening is not the final screening. I mean, our initial screening is just to weed out outliers, things that don't look like they pencil out. And it's not a radical screening initially.
Well, I mean, and this is just the baseline.
I see.
And this right now is just the beginning of the baseline. Everything will be compared against this.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
And that will be part of our charrette, too, that we're going to be having in November
I see.
to talk
Yeah,
about these
this
things.
is John McPherson. Maybe I can shed a little bit of light on this. Our scope of work for the project had originally asked us to be able to model the project with and without the Knickarm crossing as an example, and with and without the highway, or the Glen Highway to Seward Highway connection as an example. And so this tech memo was started long before the policy committee decision to not model the Knickarm crossing in the plan. So some of the information on the household distribution that is in here may no longer be applicable. We would only be modeling, as I understand it now, an MTP that does not include the Knickarm crossing. So I don't want people to get confused that we have two scenarios, one with and without a bridge. Yes, we have the land use allocation, and we've coordinated that with the master borough, but I don't believe that's going to be needed any longer. And then the only other thing I would emphasize, and I think this is what Vivian has said, is this is the existing road network, existing transit system with only those projects that are committed to. They're considered a done deal. And the idea is to see, okay, if we only do things that are a done deal, and we project future growth, where will our problems be? And it'll be looking at where those future problems are anticipated that will drive some of the alternative discussion. There are not alternatives in here yet. So just hopefully that's clear.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Hanson?
The only thing, I want to echo what Hal and Will said, I think your comments and responses are great. The only thing is that on item number 2, I don't like the response.
It's good to see that too.
The person says, I also understand the models have to be based on certain years, and our comments, thank you for your comment. It seems like it should be, yes, they are, no, they're not. Something else, but not just thank you. But the rest of it looks good.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
I have a couple minor comments. Yes, please. Early questions. So, I appreciate having the information as far as the pedestrian, 2007 Cambridge pedestrian plan states, the existing sidewalk system coverage represents roughly 13% of total miles of road in need for goal. One of the things that I've been frustrated with is that's a document that was developed 10 years ago. I mean, we've done 10 years worth of projects since then. And I know we're in the process of updating the non-motorized plans right now, but it'd be great to know how far we've come in those past 10 years, because there are a lot of projects that have been completed. Granted, we've built new roads as well, but usually with those new roads, we've also built new sidewalks and bike infrastructure. So I appreciate that it actually states the 2007, just so that it puts a date on it at that time and people recognize that that's a dated piece of information. So without the date there, I'd be a little bit concerned. My other comment on some of the bicycle comments that came, it's true that right now there are no on-street bikes. There's no on-street bicycle infrastructure in Shuyak River as this document is being produced. But there are 2 of them that are going to be bid this winter and striped and implemented next year. Because I'm going, there's nothing in Eagle River, we've been working on the design. So it is accurate as of today though. So as of September 5th, when this document was produced, it is actually true that there is no marked on-street bike facilities in Shuyak River, because I had a little bit of an objection to that. And then I have I guess a question for the committee as far as how to, the statement that ideally a bicycle network should form a grid with connections every half mile to provide direct and continuous routes. I agree with the statement, ideally that is the case. We have a 1 mile arterial grid in the municipality of Anchorage, and we do not have a half mile collector grid. So we don't even have a half mile collector grid for a roadway system. So I struggle with this statement because we don't have that sort of grid pattern for any method of travel. So I don't, if we're making this statement for bicycle infrastructure, I guess when I was looking through it, that was my only rub that I had with it, because I'm looking at it, it's a great thing to shoot for, and I would like to see it, I'd like to see us have a half-mile collector grid as well, because it would not.
To go with the bike.
To go with the bike, because it would actually help alleviate a lot of the problems we have on the arterial road system.
I would like that a lot.
So I guess it says ideally that it should form that. It doesn't, I guess my rub with it is that I think it sets an, I don't want to say an unreasonable expectation, but it sets an expectation that I don't know if we can meet because we don't have I guess a complete system that we could connect in many locations in town, not everywhere. We have incontinuous right-of-ways, we have right-of-ways that have been vacated, we have streams that cut across this, we have a non-connected system that makes this, it's ideal. So,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
That language came from the bicycle plan. So would you like us to put that in quotations or write it cite a reference rather than just have it appear to be coming from us?
if it's coming from the bicycle plan, I think it'd be good to have that reference. Yeah. Because as we update the non-motorized plan, I mean, I wasn't here when the bike plan was originally put together, and I'm going to be a part of it, and it's like I said, I like, it's just like Vision Zero in my mind. Zero is the goal that we should have for fatalities on our roadway system. Everybody recognizes the idea of trying to get to zero deaths is challenging. Very challenging, but it is the goal we should be shooting for, and I'm in agreement with this. It's ideally we should be shooting for this, but in my mind, it's also very difficult. So, but if we have a reference coming exactly from the plan, I'd like to have a reference on there.
We'll add that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Ms. Buck?
Question about the terminology throughout the document. Seems to be using Anchorage Bowl and AMATS area kind of interchangeably. It might be my ignorance in catching up to this. And sometimes the municipality of Anchorage is used, so just for consistency, maybe it should be looked at a little closer.
Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the question comes, if it says AMATS area, it probably means both Anchorage and Shubeck, whatever usually they specify as Anchorage Bowl, or it should be specific to those sub-areas within the AMATS area. But I have to not look very closely, so that all of them are correct.
And through the chair, some instances, data is only available for the municipality of Anchorage, so that also includes Girdwood. And the AMATS planning area excludes Girdwood. That's the only difference.
That explains all the problems. I think
That
explains it.
Partial explanation.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right. Are there questions or comments on the items from the public?
I'm not really a member of the public, but I figured to speak anyways. So the bike plan is actually 2010, not 2007.
Well, no, that pedestrian plan was the one that says 2007.
They both say 2007, actually. It was an error when we were working on the document. So I was noting we need to change that for the bike plan to say 2010 Anchorage bike plan.
Yeah. On page 43.
I think it was a bad copy and paste job. By me.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other questions or comments? Comments, likewise? Hearing none, the matter now lies with committee.
Move forward to the policy committee for approval.
Second.
And some of the modifications that have been requested are noted. Huh?
Yes, as modified by the discussion committee.
They're too technical.
I'll correct my motion.
I'll second, correct. Are there any objections to the corrected motion? Hearing none, we are so moved. So the next item before us is item 5D, the 2015 to 18 Transportation Improvement Program Administrative Modification number 16.
Madam Chair, this is updating Table 7 to reflect, the distribution of the 5307 monies based on the split letter that was signed by the Alaska Railroad and the municipality of Anchorage on September 4th. Those changes, again, are in Table 7. They're shown on the memo here. There is one additional change that I need to request that you make here today. It's pretty minor. On Table 3, the last grandfather project, which is the Abbott Road rehabilitation, currently includes language, the last sentence that says illustrative funding is shown to allow project to advance if funds became available or become available. And we just need to strike that line, not showing that illustrative funding. So we can just strike that one sentence there.
Where is that?
The roadway table, Table 3,
Yeah.
that's grandfather's one. Abbott Road Rehabilitation Phase 2, Jupiter Drive to Birch Road.
Got it.
Just need to strike that last sentence. The Table 7 is outside of our AMATS allocation, so we don't decide how that shows up, but we do have to include it in our tip. And now that the split letter is signed, we need to get those approved as soon as possible so both the railroad and the public transportation department can start utilizing those funds.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee? I guess my question, is that okay? For what we decided, what the table.
Speak from our side.
Or what?
Fireworks or
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, matter is with the committee, so just so we're clear, the changes are, everything was shown in the memo as far as Table 7, and then in addition, the minor modification to Table 3, removing that sentence. Okay.
And just for clarification, this dollar figure is such that the policy committee needs to approve it, so we're asking you to recommend their approval to the policy committee.
Thank you.
I'll move that we forward the 2015-18 Transportation Improvement Program admin modification number 16 to the policy committee for approval with changes discussed.
Moved by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Allen. Are there any objections? Hearing none. Let the record show that Mr. Hassan has left. That there were no objections prior to his leaving. So the motion is passed. All right. That was all of the action items, correct?
all I
Yes.
have.
All right, so we're on to item 6A, the Seward Highway O'Malley and Diamond Boulevard. Just state your name for the record.
Sean Baskey, Project Manager for the Department of Transportation. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to come in and sneak into the agenda last minute. So we do have a couple other members of the team here. Matt Aplow, Project Designer with CH. Rachel Steer with Dell, our Public Involvement Specialist. The rest of the team. So as far as what I came to talk about is the Seward Highway O'Malley to Diamond project. A number of you have seen presentations from me on this project before, but just to cover the general gist of it, this is the third in a set of 3 projects that has an environmental document approved from way back in the day, early 2000s. So, the first one was the Tudor to Dowling portion, now construction on Dowling to Diamond portion, and this is the second half of the Diamond to O'Malley portion. So right now, we just completed construction on that first phase, which created that off-ramp off the Seward Highway to Scooter over the old Seward Highway. So as far as purpose and need of this project, right, it's all about mobility, so increasing capacity, improving safety, and then all those other tangible benefits of some of the other improvements that we're doing, cross-border connectivity and other things. So we do have a capacity issue out there. Anybody that's been out there on Diamond and O'Malley at those interchanges, has seen capacity issues at those, as well as on the highway at certain times of the day. We certainly have connectivity issues. Mid-block on the highway there, right at Brayton, off of Brayton and Scooter and Academy. We got a lot of kids that were crossing the highway. We did have an HSIP project, so Highway Safety Improvement Project, that went in and installed a fence here in the last couple weeks. So that's finally done, and that'll hopefully help improve the opportunities that some of the youth are taking to cross the highway and get over to the other side of the highway for various reasons. But that's just a Band-Aid project, whereas this one will provide that connectivity that is obviously needed because everybody has shown the need for that cross-border connectivity. And then obviously safety is a concern in the area. We did a 5-year study period. We had 9 crashes with bikes and pedestrians just at the Diamond interchange, and then obviously a number of crashes in other areas throughout the corridor. Again, over that 5-year study period, we had 48 crashes on the highway, 17 injuries resulting out of those. And at the ramps and interchanges where you have all of your crossings, that's where you'd expect most of your crashes to occur. And we had 953 crashes at those ramps and interchanges, 297 injuries as a result of all of those vehicular movements. I've shared with the committee, stories, from my past, but, each of those crashes and those injuries result in a story that the public has to tell about, the need for the project. So certainly there is a need for us to improve things in there. So as far as the project, overall project, we do have a number of improvements that are proposed. We're going to continue that 6-lane section. So south from Diamond to Dowling, they're going to extend that 6-lane section. So we've got 6 lanes on the east side on Brayton. We will be improving some of those pathway facilities that aren't there right now. I used to live off of Brayton, and I remember, pushing my son in, a stroller to take my daughter over to the soccer fields, to go play. And, on that frontage road, people are driving 70 miles an hour, sometimes faster than on the highway itself. So certainly a concern for, non-motorized active transportation users in that area. So we'll be adding a pathway or a sidewalk depending on where we're at and the constraints that we've got. On the west side, there will be some off-ramps and some other things, as a result of some of the decisions that we're making at the Diamond interchange. We'll have a short section of frontage road on the west side. So on the back side of your fact sheet, it's got a nice little map that kind of shows you the overall schematic. You'll see an extension of Homer Drive on the west side or the bottom of your page there for a short section. And of course, we'll be connecting into that new Scooter off-ramp and raising up the highway and making a new interchange through that area. So it'll connect over onto the east side. Municipality of Anchorage has a project that it'll connect to. They've got the Vanguard Academy project that's connecting up to Haddon. So we'll be connecting into that system and making improvements through there. And then as you can see, the preferred alternative for that intersection or interchange is a roundabout. So, as far as the overall improvements, the next item is, interchange improvements. So, anybody that's been at O'Malley during rush hour traffic has probably seen the backups that take you almost all the way down to the railroad and beyond, depending on how bad movements are at certain times. So we're proposing a DDI. DDIs are new to Alaska. Muldoon Interchange obviously is the first one in the state, but they're going in all over the U.S. They're the new flavor of the month, but for a lot of good reasons. They've got on the fact sheet at the front there, we've got a kind of a list of, a bunch of the positive impacts that DDIs have, reduced delay and increased capacity, improvement of safety for all users, not just the motorized, but non-motorized, reducing conflicts, which improves the safety of vehicles and pedestrians. And they are easy to use, even though, from the 30,000 foot level, people start going, why do you cross over to the other side? I've driven through the one of here recently, and it feels like it flows pretty well. It's intuitive to me. Obviously, there's a huge public involvement campaign associated with any new thing like that. So we've got a lot of plans for informing the public of what the pros, cons, impacts are to local businesses and other things. So there you go. We're proposing a directional tax.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Can I get technical on you?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so somebody heading northbound along the Seward Highway,
Yeah.
coming into town, that lives along the frontage road on Brayton. Technically, they'd get off at O'Malley and go through the intersection to continue along Brayton. I shouldn't say one of the only negatives, but one of the negative things about DDIs is they do not allow the through movement for frontage road. So how is somebody going to get to that frontage road without cutting through the neighborhood? Especially when there are no cross connections for many of those developments through
Absolutely.
neighborhoods off the frontage road.
Yeah, that is absolutely one of the drawbacks associated with DEIs. Obviously, there's a lot of other positives, but it comes down to picking your route, right? And most of the people that are going into those intersections or into that neighborhood, that's the only route that they can get into, right? I mean, there's other ones. As soon as you get past the one at Scooter, we'll have the roundabout that'll allow you to get into and out of, right? So it's that short stretch of like the trailer court and that other neighborhood just south of there that wouldn't have direct access. The relative counts of those, as compared to all the other movements, I think it's in the couple hundred. I can't remember. It's a very small count, but the people that live there and are destined to go there will have to choose their route, whether it's taking a right, pulling a UE at Commodore or other places, or whenever I lived, I lived over here at Brayton. Whenever I needed to get home, I knew that I had to come all the way down the highway, pull a UE down here, and if I ever wanted to go to, Safeway or something down here, although there's no Safeway, but if I needed to go to any of these other businesses, I had to go around and find my way. Probably the larger impact is once you get down to Diamond, because we've got so O'Malley, certainly there's a lot less north-south movement on the frontage road on Brayton that you would need. But once you get up to Diamonds, and there's some more impact. First stop off at Scooter and Academy. So previously in the last project that we were building for the off ramp, we looked at what the interchange would likely be, and so this is just capturing what we had originally proposed and are continuing to propose, which is a set of roundabouts there. Obviously, the highway goes over the top. We have to raise up the highway, and on the eastern side, there's the church and the trailer court off to the southeast. So, but a lot of benefits proposed with this, having the pathways, bike lanes. This will ultimately be municipality of Anchorage Road. It is currently on the east side, it is currently on the west side, and we'll be making the connection. Currently maintained by the Department of Transportation on the west side, but that maintenance has been moved to fall to the municipality when the interchanges ultimately.
I've got a comment on Scooter Academy and Vanguard. Timing of that construction with our construction is imperative.
Absolutely.
Because the amount of traffic, if we don't get our section built, the amount of traffic you're gonna dump onto some substandard roads and the substandard intersection is gonna be unreal for the public.
Absolutely.
We have, in our proposed bond package this year, we have two major properties. We have buildings, et cetera. We have this one package, this next spring, we have one proposed that hasn't even gone to the assembly yet. By one smaller project, piece of property, or we have a major building we gotta take out too, which is not funded. And I think the last time we heard was, and I was looking at your dates here, 2001 to 2004. Last time I heard was 2003. I think that's kind of where we're heading.
You mean 2023?
I mean, 2023, I'm sorry, messed up. So, I mean, is that
So
good thinking, John?
Currently proposed with, very optimistic schedules, 2021 in construction. We have not started acquisition either. We are currently at 35% design, and so, until we get to 75% design, we can't even start acquisition. So you guys technically would be ahead of us in the overall scheme of acquisition.
I would hope so, but we're not gonna build it before you build this section.
Indeed.
But I think, as
Yeah.
I said, timing is imperative on that section going across there.
Yeah, and we're actually hoping to, we've discussed a number of times with your project manager, and we're proposing to sit down later this fall as we're starting to move into our 75% design, to make sure we're tied in, because it's imperative that, our section matches up with your section.
Yes.
We've gotten your plans, we've gotten your AutoCAD documents and everything. We're tying in right now, but, there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen in those subtle, design elements, for sure. We're basically continuing the cross-section proposed by your project and then passing it through, hopefully in the roundabout. Okay.
But just keep that in mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
It
our
will not
schedule-
function, it will not function, without.
And our schedule is going to be dependent too on voters approving the bonds, whenever we propose it.
Which takes us to the Diamond Interchange with another DDI closure. A lot of improvements and, obviously the signature thing, the drop of the new ramp associated with that. Again, I'd say that we're at 35% design. We have received funds from the community as part of that process. Specifically the traffic section of the community, and we're working on analyzing things there. And your group. But as she pointed out, one of the major movement losses is through movement on your frontage roads. It has less impact on the east side because you've got Sandalwood on the east side, but on Homer, specifically right north of here, we've got a lot of commercial industrial area, and then we've also got the fire department. So we've met with the fire department. We're trying to sort things out there, but having a north-south movement through this is important. Whether or not we'll be able to handle that movement is yet to be seen. We're looking at alternatives right now. Yes, sir.
I was going to make this comment at the
Fracas.
Yeah.
And elected not to, but I made it before, so I'm gonna make it again. I've got continued concerns over the design of these intersections, which I admit are very cool from a design standpoint. But when we've got what effectively are medium speed, unrestricted right turns on these ramps with head crossings, there are problems with people just not watching out for heads and bikes, and they're moving fast enough, there's nothing they can do. If we look at, what was done at Lake Otis and Tudor, you've got, restricted right turns, you've got the same thing at northbound C Street, and Benson and Northern Heights, whichever one goes that way. But in contrast, you do not have that over here at Elmore and Martin Luther King, and this one over here is a mess. And we are going to have a similar problem with the one at Muldoon and the Glen. And I know there's no easy, cheap way to fix that, but I would encourage the department to try to come up with something to, I know you need to maintain the speed, it doesn't really matter because people are gonna drive as fast as they want anyway, but unless there's something there that physically makes them stop and look, they don't. And unfortunately, in those sorts of situations, it doesn't matter who's in the crosswalk, they're gonna lose.
Yeah, and I would say that, we're obviously still at 35%. We are aware of the issue. I mean, as I pointed out, there are a number of the crashes occurred at that interchange, and many of them at that specific location. Currently we do have backups, prior to the proposed project that's constructed right now. We do have backups on the highway. There's a lot of movement in that, southbound to westbound. And so accommodating those and preventing backups on the highways is absolutely imperative. But, there are things that we can potentially do. We're still looking. Thank you for, again.
I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah,
I recognize that it's a challenge. I don't,
It absolutely is.
short of, grade separating the whole thing, I don't have an answer, and I know that's
No,
not necessarily.
I mean, ultimately, pushing people to the other side of the roadway so that way that specific free right movement and forcing them down to Old Sewer Highway. I mean, there's things that you can do for routing.
You got a free ride on the other side too.
Yeah,
Right.
This movement is far less, and it's narrower, so,
A little more channel. Yeah.
Right. And I think another thing to point out is that there is no on-ramp off of Homer, so southbound from Diamond, you would not be able to get onto the highway. You're pushed down through the roundabout here, and then at that point, you'd be able to get back. That's the only other major thing, the loop ramp in this area.
It holds true to the roundabouts too. I mean, I wasn't,
Yeah.
that one.
No, for sure.
It's.
Other than that, we've had a lot of public involvement going on in the recent past. We've been the Freight Advisory Committee, the VPAC, we've been out to all the community councils. We had an open house. We're continuing to push out a lot of information. We'll have another whole campaign associated with DEIs that we saw for Muldoon interchange. Another similar one, just a different side of town. Likely not the same people that you're targeting. We're excited to push on the project. 75% design by next year. Construction 2021, pending a lot of things. Likely back in 2022 to 23. Other than that, we've got a website that's got a lot of information that we're pushing. Anything else?
What is the red color?
Sure. That's basically the area behind curb and gutter that potentially going to be colored concrete, asphalt. It's just another way of, who knows?
A possible location for landscaping features as well.
Who knows what will be there? But it could be grass. It could be.
Hardscape is the current leading option.
It does stand out though.
Yeah. Another question about the pathway that's underneath the highway, are there barriers?
Great question. So, current practice on diverging diamond interchanges is to pass people into the median, and then for portions of that, we would put in concrete barriers on both sides. There's a lot of guidance and lessons learned throughout the U.S. These are going in all over the place.
Well, it looks like you have paths along the sides. So you're gonna have them along the sides and in the middle?
So the pathways along the sides are currently shown at
Or-
O'Malley.
Yeah.
But
And
we're still
Diamond.
looking at whether or not the pathways would be on the sides in O'Malley.
Got it.
There's potential that we're pushing into the middle. Again, we're at 35% design.
Yeah.
Best practice is generally passing to the middle, so that way you have less conflict points and in those free right areas, free left areas.
Yep.
And specifically under these, one of the major premises is trying not to have to replace the bridges at both O'Malley and Diamond, because they've still got a lot of service life left. That's an expensive reconstruction. So how can you stick within the existing footprint without, obviously there's other interchange alternatives
Yeah.
that potentially operate better, or, there's a lot of pros and cons to everything. Yes, sir.
I think earlier in your presentation, you were talking about Diamond area with 953 accidents and 297 injuries. Did I have the right area?
Hold on. Go back to it's 953 crashes at the ramps and interchange associated with the entire corridor, so that'd be O'Malley and Diamond. And that's on ramps and, obviously, your intersections.
We're gonna change the name from Scooter to something else.
That's a question.
Everybody wants to be connected.
I believe you guys can go.
Well, if
Tell us what
everybody.
you want it named, Jerry. We'll
No,
change
the
it.
question comes down to if there was addresses made off of Scooter that got changed with the project that just happened, and if they're going to be put kindly on having to change addresses again. So that'd be another question that I would have when it comes to addressing things that we don't often think about, but I've had to deal with in the past. Not fun. So, are there any questions or comments from the public?
Just wanted to point out, this is Alaska's first Green Roads project.
First what, pardon?
Our first Green Roads project.
Oh, okay.
Officially.
For the record, that's Robert Devassi with you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah.
All right, next item is 6E, the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking Tech Memo 1A, 1B, and Tech Memo 2 to the Policy Committee this month for their approval. And we're very hopeful that they will approve it because we're wanting to have the charrette, the 3-day charrette. It's our major public outreach for this project. We want to have it in early November. One day, we want to have all day on a Saturday to encourage as many people from the public to attend. And the other public meetings will be in the evenings on the following Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have a coffee bar, encourage people to come. And we're going to have different focus groups during the day, for example, bicycle and pedestrian, freight. And we're going to have a land use section mixed with transit to look at what can we do that's new and different to implement the land use plan and look at our non-SOV single occupancy vehicle options. So I'm pretty excited about it, and we really want to encourage a lot of people to come. There's a lot of planning that has to go into it, so I'm really hopeful that we can move forward with this.
So you said the goal is to have that in early November, once you go through the policy committee and know whether or not things are, then you'll set the dates.
Yes, I hate to advertise dates
Yeah.
right now because we're not sure what's exactly going to happen, what could happen, so.
Okay.
But that's our
Goal.
Goal, yeah.
I wrote it down, goal.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Perhaps, is John leading that effort? Is he still on the?
Yes, but he may have dropped off. John?
John, you still listening? I think he was the one that hung up.
I'm afraid so.
That's okay.
What would you like us to ask?
No, it's okay. Great.
You sure? Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other committee comments for the good of the order? Mr. Hanson?
I just thought I'd give a little update. We have about a month to maybe a month and a half to the end of one or two seasons in Alaska. It's the end of construction season, we'll start going into winter. But we have about 4 or 5 major road projects that we're working on. We anticipate to get them paved, not 100% done with landscaping, maybe we'll do 2 sidewalks. Bernard Road is going pretty well. The contractor is, we've got a good contractor. Although he's run into some issues, there's an underground storage tank that nobody knew about. There's been several cribs that he's got to take care of, but we anticipate to get it paved and get the sidewalks in and everything this year. Tourniquet Boulevard's going fairly well. You know, it was underwater for quite some time this summer, but the contractor's doing well, and we expect to get it paved and with some work. Maybe there's a section from 42nd to Spenard Road, but it's already paved with curb and gutter right now, but we expect to get that done. Yosemite Drive is basically done except for landscaping. There was a major one out there in Eagle River with school district. It was pretty contentious out there, but it's paved and all the sidewalks and trails are in and looks pretty good. Dubin, I was out there just today and it's coming along reasonably well. We've had some issues with retaining walls and driving piling that have delayed us, but we still expect to get a majority of the work done this year too. So I think it's going to come together depending when we get the lights done. So.
Any other committee comments? Ms. Walsh?
A couple having to do kind of with the board.
Okay.
He reminded, I'm sorry, excuse me.
I know, you don't remember as many things as me.
I don't remember yesterday, and I'm Norwegian. I'm getting old too. I got a lot of problems. 100th Avenue. We do intend to get the roundabouts in under the Minnesota, up near the church, done this year, substantially completed this year. And then the surcharge, we're going to let it sit another year. And next summer, we'll be hopefully peeling off the excess material and getting that and opening it up next summer.
Ms. Walsh is next.
Just a couple of things. If you have any need to go to Government Hill or the port in the coming week, reschedule it. I think it's going to be next week, midweek, right?
Yeah, it's soon.
Midweek, the entrance to the port will be closed for 48 hours. Right. Hopefully they'll be starting on a Wednesday or Thursday night to be done in time for the Sunday ships, because the railroad has a crew coming through to repair the crossing, the at-grade crossing there. So it's it's something that has to be done, and there's no good time to do it. But I think we'll be okay. Truck traffic will be going through Government Hill, turning left on Bluff Road, coming down Bluff Road. So not exactly through the neighborhood, but it'll be an interesting few days. And I want to give a shout out to the railroad and to DOT's contractor for the work they've been doing on the ramp. And I drive that way to work, and they've been doing great. I mean, they've had a really tough traffic control situation. I know they had a lot of unexpected issues Great work, but it's not.
I will pass that along.
Okay, that's it. Mr. Hart?
Kudos to DOT for their good work on making green projects happen. Also, I would love to be able to add up the miles of pathways and miles of feet, however far we've gone, new pathways or improved pathways in the city and the state areas of expertise, and put those together. Because I think that's a really important story. It's a positive story. And both the green aspect as well as the aspect around. We're being heard, we're trying to incorporate these, or we're hearing the public and we're incorporating these things into our infrastructure. But I would really like to see how much, when we, at the end of the day, what was built in the last season. That would be a neat report.
And he just reminded me of something. The Assembly awarded a contract to kind of, to a contractor to extend Fish Creek Trail across that property from Northwood over to Spinard Road. There's nothing there in between to get started on that. That won't be completed until next year. And there are two other sections of Fish Creek Trail that are going to be reconstructed next summer on the in the same area. And as part of Turning Boulevard, we're reconstructing part of the Fish Creek Trail along Turning Boulevard. And also in that light, expect to get done is the 10th Avenue Bike Corridor this summer. That's going on fairly well. And then also we have the Cordova bike lane project that's going on. We're waiting for some material so we can to slip line a storm drain line, since we're moving the curb and out a little bit, and so that should get done this year too, in that line.
Al, that's something I've wanted to see for a long time. It's gonna be touch and base with a lot of people, but I mean, it's something I think we should, well, as the non-motorized plans are getting updated, you know, and we're working towards updating and consolidation of the non-motorized active transportation plans. I think we need to do one, there needs to be evaluation of the number of projects that have been done since the last time.
That's the first part.
Yeah, but then the ongoing installation with the projects that we've been doing, because there's a number. So, I mean, and it's by us, parks, DOT.
Right.
I mean,
because
yeah.
it's so spread around, I think if we could put that information together, it'd be really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. All right, any other committee comments? As I stated, I will not be here next month, but I should be here for both November and December, so. All right, are there any public comments at this time?
Just a quick one, just wanted to show appreciation to the city. I know DOT has been involved with UAA and there's new design class for some time, and now the city is offering projects to the UAA senior design class with AWU and Alaska State Park. So it's kind of cool to see a lot of projects that we're kind of giving to the students to help improve their understanding of projects and their design skills. So something I've been working with the city, and then now they're sending projects to UA. So.
Any other public comments?
This is Jessica Smith at the AMATS too. I just wanted to tell you guys I appreciate AMATS staff reaching out to us and working with us on the certification just making sure that we were connected. We're all through the same region.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. All right, I appreciate everybody's time. It is 3:51 p.m. and we are adjourned.